Well, good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back. George Morgan here at your service. It's PSGL, it's Wednesday night, it's Spain tonight as well. Lots on the table, lots of battling. The title contest is still alive and kicking. And Jack, it's only taken us 10 rounds. We're on the 11th. It's all to play for.
Boromant goes on the inside and takes the lead on the final lap of the race. Now it's side by side between Boromant and Warner, but Boromant's got the inside.
A guest star here in this phenomenal race. Cameron Dowd looking to take P2 in his very first PSGL F1 PC race. Incredible to say the least. You see that Putin still lead. 1.5 seconds. DRS is the
All right, and here we are. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to PSGL. This is PCF4, and tonight we've got a great race up ahead. It's round 6. We're heading to Monza. I'll be your host for tonight. My name is Blitzsky, and I'm joined here together, as always, by Zexter. What's up, man?
Been good, Myth. And in a surprising turn of events, it's not the track we are heading to that's got me pumped as much as the music in the game for a change. So I'm liking the beats, but of course, let's not discount the track. It's Monza, the Temple of Speed. So enough said.
Indeed. So we're heading today to the Temple of Speed, where we're going to have hopefully yet another great race out there, just as we had last week with some fierce battles all the way through the end in Austria. So let's first do a little bit of a recap of our race last week. So here are the results. And if we look at that, we see that it was pole position for the Ferrari last time out, the only driver that went under the 103s, although Harry Nuns was a 103.001. But Simone Viola took the pole position in the race, unfortunately had to be beaten by the one and only Joris Kuze. He already picked up 3 race wins out of 5 races in total this season, and in the 2 races that he didn't win, one of them was due to an incident, and one of them he got sent back after a penalty, so it really shows that he is the man to beat this season. Also, to no surprise, leading the championship, but we'll go to that later. Simone Viola with a wonderful 2nd place and 2nd in standings. And Tope, continues that with a 3rd this race. 3rd also in Monaco, that was, and also 3rd in the standings. And as you can see, there were 2 penalties that were dished out. So for Harry and Sparky in 8th and 9th. But in the end, that doesn't matter. It doesn't even put them, well, it puts them 1 down. So Noel Corman's gone past them. So they finished 9th and 10th. So still some points for them, but perhaps not as much as they wanted. But we had quite a good race last week, didn't we?
Yeah, without a doubt. Every race we come to, these Packer drivers have been performing phenomenally, and it reflects in the standings, both on the drivers and the constructors side. And even in that brief 1.5 hour race that we have, qualifying is a buzz of its own, and then the race is action-packed. Good, fine, wheel-to-wheel racing action.
Exactly. So let's take a look now at the standings, the driver standings, so we have an idea how everything stands. So I'll already give you a little bit of a hint about that, and then in a moment Zach Exer will fill you in with the current constructor standings. First up then, the driver standings. As you can see, Joris with 3 race wins to his name, 60 points also. He leads the table as we head into the second half of the season. Has 60 points in total, a 14-point lead over Simone Viola, who finished 2nd in the last 2 races, also has a race win to his name, so his form has been stellar the last 3 races with only podiums, but so far it's only enough to come within 14 points of Joris. Then Tope follows him, 6 points behind, 20 points behind the championship leader. And then it's Elliot Noren, who had 2 really great races, a 2nd place and a race win. And apart from that, has been able to pick up some points, but not all too many. And in 5th place, we find Jeremy Gallinier, who unfortunately DNF'd last time out, but also still won 22 points because of a 3rd and 2nd place to his name. Rounding off the top 10 then, Kuba Treziak for Red Bull, Cordon N'Golo for Williams, our 2nd Ferrari driver in Alan Benasek, P8. And then we have Andres Franco and Emil Lundell rounding off the top 10. But they're very close to one another, 14, 15 points, and 7 and 8 are on a shared 20 points. So it's looking quite close here in the standings. It's very likely that we're going to see some changes in that after tonight's race.
Yeah, well, over on the constructors' end, it's a bit similar, at least in the midfield. But let's talk about the top 3. Alpine, Ferrari, and Alfa Romeo. No changes there apart from gathering up a bunch of points. 82 points for Alpine, 66 for Ferrari, and that pair of Alfa Romeo drivers who I've been calling wildcards have 47 points now. Of course, big movers are in the bottom half of the table of sorts, best of the rest. Mercedes jumps 2 positions up into 4th position in the constructor standings with 26 points. Biggest loser out of them, of course, is Williams with 20 points, find themselves down to 7th. McLaren took themselves all the way from the bottom of the table in 10th to 8th position at the very least with 14 points. So a lot of these teams still have much to learn from the front runners, specifically Alpine and the way they've been operating. But yeah, I still think as we've reached this halfway mark of the season of sorts, there's still so much of opportunity for these drivers to work together as a team and step up in the constructor standings.
Exactly, and with that we round off the information about the championship and the previous races, and we're all going to focus on Monza, the race that we have tonight. A quick peek into the lobby shows us that we are soon going to head in. Drivers are currently readying up, and it looks like pretty much everyone is there. We do have a few substitute drivers, if I remember correctly. We have Harlan McKees coming in for Red Bull, and I think that is about it. The rest of the drivers should be participating, at least to my knowledge. But yeah, Monza, one of the classic tracks, another track that's been on the calendar ever since. But, I mean, can you really imagine a season without Monza, Zach Texter?
Yeah, not a single season without Monza would I like to even imagine, considering I'm a Ferrari fan. And apart from that, just the sheer speed the cars reach in Formula One and even in sim racing, I think drivers do thoroughly enjoy it. Of course, might not be too crazy on different fronts. Pretty straightforward with that enormous straight out of the final corner and across all three sectors. A genuinely fun track to drive. I think it's a perfect track for beginners as well in sim racing. So yeah, we cannot have a season without Monza.
Definitely not. So let's zoom in on the track a little bit more. And for that, we have the track map and some information coming from myself. So the track map, as you can see here, the Monza, the Temple of Speed, 3.6 miles or 5.79 kilometers long. First race there was in 1928, where we also had a tragic incident of Materazzi. And total, we find that this track has 11 corners, of which also 2 DRS zones, detection before turn 7, which is the second Lesmo, and then from after turn 7 to turn 8, which is down the Curva del Seraglio, we find the first DRS zone, and then with the DRS just before the start finish straight after the world famous Parabolica, we find our final DRS zone down the main straight, where we'll see a lot of overtaking happen and also some very high speeds that the drivers will hit. I think we could predict them around the 350 kilometers an hour mark, which is very, very high. And indeed, the drivers, not just in-game, but also here in sim racing, will go very, very fast, as you mentioned before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking forward to 18 drivers today for this race. Curious to see how the reserve drivers do as well. Seemingly, that's another particular tradition of sorts for the reserves to step up and do even better than the drivers who were supposed to be here throughout the season. Goes to show the amount of talent in sim racing these days, regardless of which tier and which league you race in.
Yeah, and I think it is only fitting that one of our Ferrari drivers is leading the pack for the first run. That is Simone Violo, who is soon to be overtaken by a Red Bull and has been overtaken by the Red Bull. I think that would be Harry, and it is indeed Harry, so we'll go on board with him. 18 drivers that we have tonight. The only 2 drivers that we're missing a McLaren by the looks of it, and we're missing not a Mercedes, not an Aston, no Alpine. Is it no, it's not an AlphaTauri either. Not a Williams. Help me out here. What are we missing? We're missing a Haas. We're only having one Haas. That is of Harry Nunn. So 18 drivers in total are about to start our first run as we see Harry make his way through Ascari.
Of course, Harry Nunn's in the Haas. We've seen him perform pretty well in the midfield on the strategy front. He had that edge in comparison to the rest of the drivers out on track last time out. On his qualifying runs, he does get those early stellar runs, gets himself in the top 5 at the very least. But this particular pack, and I think this goes to show across PSGL, one run or the earliest run means very little unless there's a play in the weather, as so to speak, and the rain comes down and gives us a bit of frenzy. But clearly goes to show Harry Nuns is a driver that can compete in the front. You can see he has seemingly aborted his lap completely. Might be a good time to turn our attention to the final corner. Looks like a bunch of cars are getting ready for a nice, good, fast lap. I'm curious to see which one of the drivers are going to be the first ones to set a fast lap around the Temple of Speed.
Yeah, so we now see Harry heading into Lesmo 1, and then after that Lesmo 2. Be very careful here to not pick up any track limits. Maximize your exit there, and as you make your way down the Curva del Seraglio, you head into the end of Sector 2, which is just before Ascari onto the left, and he has a 52.2 to his name for now. Goes a little bit wide through the right-hander in Ascari as he makes his way down to the parabolic. In the distance, you can see an Aston Martin who's just about to start his run. So we go on board with Harry, taking a close line 6 gear through the parabolica. Make sure that he keeps his line tight has to maximize and minimize the amount of grits used, and he has a 118.395 to his name, which is over 3/10 quicker than our Ferrari driver and our pole sitter last time out, so it shows that Harry's got quite the pace.
Yeah, lap times roll out onto the timesheet, of course, and you can see familiar names up in front. Javier Domin, however, didn't quite have the best runs last time out, and as I say, familiar names. We've got the Alpines up there. Joris setting a lap time of 1 minute 18.295 to dictate the pace early into this qualifying session, as almost half of the grid is still yet to set a lap time. His teammate is seemingly a bit far off to his particular lap time. I just realized I might have been talking about the wrong Harry last time out, so apologies there. Regardless, both of them seem quick. As I said, he's gone 4th fastest, Harry Nuns, 1 minute 18.562.
We're now on board with Coronangolo as he makes his way around the parabolic as well. Should be on for a 5er as well. It just goes under that 118.498 currently in P3. As we still have 4 drivers to come round. And Noah Corman still has to go on the outlet. Elliot Norin has spun and invalidated. And Tope has just started his first flyer as he makes his way into Sector 2. Does not get been in the way. Nobody was in the way there for him as he headed into the Lesmos. Let's see if he can have a quick sector time too. But by the looks of it, his ERS is almost depleted already. So I'm not sure if his lap is going to be fast enough. Eyeing for a 52. But he's at a 53.7, so this doesn't look like the fast lap that we were hoping for. Has now also invalidated through Ascari, so that means that he'll be coming in. Elliot Norin is going to aboard, and the only driver is actually on a fast lap already is Noel Carmen.
Of course, Noah Carmen has stepped up quite a bit for McLaren. We saw that as a reflection in the constructors, and we did see him battle it out in the front of the midfield at the very least. So I'd like to think his qualifying goes a tad bit better. I think the last couple of races he's not really had the stellar qualifying, so to speak, and he only goes 17th fastest today.
So not the best sort of run for Noel Carmen, as about a second off of that lead driver that is yours, who also has a 10th up on his competition, and then Harry has a 10th up on his competition. So first 2 drivers definitely showing that they have a little bit more pace in hand than all the other drivers, where most of the drivers are putting in laps in 118.5, 118.6 is what we see the most. That is where at least the top 10 will be found. Both of the Ferraris are in our top 10. That's good to see. Same goes for both of the Alpines. But of course, the place where you want to be here in Monza. There's a little bit of bragging rights. You want to be on that pole position. But in the race, that does not matter all too much. The place where you want to be in the lead heading into the final lap, which is after the Prima Variante. So the first corner, the first slow chicane after the long main straight. If you come out in the lead there, then you should be able to take the race win.
Yeah, back on track come a handful of drivers to beat their own lap times, if anything. And we see 2 familiar names are yet to set a lap time at all. Tope and Elliot Norin still yet to set a lap time. Of course, going into the race, not only do we have to be mindful about who does end up being up in front. Ideally, you do want to be the first one there. But historically, in this season at the very least, I think it's to make sure you don't get caught up in all the chaos and the frenzy that might unravel when some of these drivers get their elbows out and are battling it out across the final lap. In particular, a couple of races ago, we did see quite the battles up in front, not even in the midfield, but up in front, which is great to see from where we are sitting, but probably not the best for the drivers who are behind the wheel.
No, definitely not. And we see it in qualifying as well. The section where Javier Domin is now heading up to just in front of the parabolic. A lot of drivers will be lining up for their laps. And I think especially when they're going to go for their third runs, we should see the drivers back each other up there a little bit, and we might have some impeding or maybe even some penalties. Let's hope that does not happen, which means we don't need a lobby restart and we can get started straight away after the runs are underway. Just in the meantime, to give you some extra information on the Monza track, I already mentioned the first race there was in 1928. All the races so far in every season have been held here in Monza. It is also the track where unfortunately two world champions have passed away. In 1955 it was Ascari, not during a race but during testing, and in 1970 that was Jochen Rindt, who after that and later that year did become the world champion, so our only posthumous world champion. What's also very interesting to note about the Monza track is that it's the third ever purpose-built motor racing circuit, and that it only took 110 days to construct this back in 1922. So last year Monza was able to celebrate its 100-year anniversary, as we see Javier Domin picking up track limits coming out of Lesmo 2. And just behind him, someone just flew by, or now we have some more drivers aboarding. But I think a Ferrari just behind, that is going to be Simone Violo. It's just a little bit quicker, about half a second, but that would be enough to gain at least one position.
Yeah, I've been riding on board Violo for a while now. Seems like both Violo and Banaszak are on fast laps with a lot of the other drivers as well. Surprised that we aren't seeing a purple sector or two from Violo. But as I say that, third fastest for now, 1 minute 18.459 from Violo. I wonder how much quicker can Banaszak go. He's seemingly wrapping up the penultimate and final corners to come on to the main straight. Sector 3 briefly turning yellow. That is slow moving cars, and Banaszak cross the line. Can he close in on his teammate? Yes, he will. He'll be fourth fastest on the board for now.
So some very good second laps for the Ferrari drivers out there, as we're currently following Napadovsky, who is going for his second fast run. And in the first sector, at the end of the first sector, he will be just 0.009 of a second slower. But we saw Simone Violo picking up almost 2/10 in the final sector, so there is perhaps a lot to gain at the end of the session, at the end of the circuit. Benny Fabels, in the meantime, has retired, so he'll be starting towards the back of the grid. Tope is likely going to settle up, and if Noel Carmen also improves, then he'll be starting at the back of the grid tonight. As we now see Napadovsky heading into the second sector, he's now 7,000 slower. That shows how well his first lap was. But look at that, Matthew Bassett, 1:18.0, goes 2/10 quicker than Joris. That is a beauty of a lap time, and that is going to be a tough nut to crack.
Yeah, I started seeing some of the drivers who we don't get to see in the top 5 who put themselves there in this qualifying session for now. Of course, a lot of the drivers we'd see competing up in front seemingly are on the back foot. You know, we got Jeremy down in 12th fastest. We got the likes of Napadowski, who's found himself before in the top 5 down in P14, 14th fastest for now. Both, of course, he's still in the pits, and with 5 minutes of qualifying left, it's gonna be all down to that last run. I believe Joris did try and attempt a lap in the last couple of minutes, but it got invalidated, so he'll be out, I'm sure, to beat his own lap time, and hopefully will be longing to beat Matthews.
Well, in the meantime, we are on board with Noel Carmen, who seems to be the leader of the pack that's now going for the second runs. The other drivers are already done with that or in the pits. Noel being a little bit off sync together with Tope and Javier Domin. Let's see how quick Noel Carmen can go around this Temple of Speed as he's on his way to hopefully set a much faster lap time but come closer to the pole position here. Most poles actually held by Lewis Hamilton, 7 poles in total. But the race wins he has to share with the legendary Michael Schumacher. Both have 5 race wins to their name. The lap record, though, is a driver that you don't see too often in the history books anymore. It's not a world champion, but was a Ferrari driver in 2004. Can you guess who that was?
Not a world champion, but a driver in 2004 has
for Ferrari.
To be. Yeah, for Ferrari. I go blank every now and then. He's from Brazil.
Yes.
I know that. And come on. Yeah, I've forgotten his name. My bad. I feel like a douche.
So with a 1:21.046 in the race, Rubens Barricaro is
That's his
the
name.
holder of the lap record. And I don't think we're going to see that beaten very quickly. And it's because the cars back then were actually quicker than they are now. It's just that nowadays the cars go quicker around the corners, not so much on the straights. Maybe on acceleration they're beaten a little bit. As we see that Noel Carmen unfortunately has invalidated, but that means that we're going to jump to Tope, who has just started his second flyer.
Yo, purple sector 1, 2. Would you look at that? I hadn't seen that from a driver. I've stayed on board for in a lap around Monza today, at least 4 minutes left. I'd like to think some of these drivers will be able to top that off. He did lose purple sector already in sector 1, but yeah, Tope, we've seen him battle it out in front. He's done a phenomenal job for Mercedes so far. Sector 2 lights up purple too. I think he's on a stellar run like no other by the looks of it. And hopefully he can nail this one and put himself on the front row at the very least. He's got about 3.5 minutes left though for qualifying. So all to play for the rest of the drivers to clearly make sure he tumbles down the order after the fact. But with the first 2 sectors purple, I think he's going to put it in the top 5 at the very least. Second fastest, 1 minute 18.234. Trumps Yoris up in front. But Matthew Bassett's time stays the fastest mid. Now that's something to be wary of for the rest.
Yeah, I'm really curious if that time by Matthew Bassett can be beaten at all. But yeah, very good lap by Tope. Purple sector 1 we saw in the second sector. It was about 1/10 quicker than the lap time we saw Harry do earlier on, where he had a 52.2 and Tope got a 52.1. So it was a 10th quicker there, and indeed in the end 1.5 tenths quicker than Harry's lap time out there. In the meantime, Sparky is the first one that has gone out. He is off sync, and all the other drivers should be coming out of the pit straight in a moment, which means we're going to have 18 drivers fight. Well, actually, no, 17, because Tope is yet to come in. And I wonder if he's got enough time to go for a final fast run. Nonetheless, the driver that doesn't have to worry about that is Sparky, as he's making his way down the Curva Biasono into the Seconda Variante, which is right over here. And with a 26.2, he's 0.06 of a second quicker, but is also about 0.3 slower than Tope was. And Matthew Bassett has cut it off. So has Sparky. So Matthew is not going to improve in his lap time. That pole has to stand. And it sounds like Sparky is gearing up for another run because he wants to go quicker.
Yeah, Tope headed into the pits as well, so the front row essentially is for the taking for the rest of the drivers. If they can beat those lap times, however, whether Tope's lap time will be good enough to keep his front row start is one of question. But Bassett's about 2/10 off of the rest of the 2/10 ahead of the rest of the field as a whole. I'm particularly looking at Violo and Yoris. And of course, let's not discount some of these other drivers. Jeremy, Elliot Norton. I don't think we've seen their fastest lap penalty. I don't know if that'll hold, but Cordon Linglo gets slapped with that one.
Yeah, so it looks like we're going to need a lobby restart later on, but this is exactly what we were worried of earlier on. As I think behind here, one of the... that it will be Emil Lundell who's going to start his fast run. We were watching Sparky earlier on, so we're also going to give some screen time here to Emil Lundell as he makes his way to the Prima Variante, the first corner of the track. Of course, some lovely Italian names that we have here. They're always nice to pronounce as Emil makes his way around the Curva Biasono and into the Seconda Variante, where he's currently at a 26.0, 11,000 slower than his previous lap time, but also about a 10th slower already than what Tope was able to do in his Mercedes earlier on. Now into the right-hander, the first Lesmo 1, and into Lesmo 2 before making his way down the first DRS straight, making sure to not pick up track limits there, does not do that, and through the Curva del Saraglio, he's heading in towards Ascari, and he's now at a 52.1. This is quicker than Tope, is also quicker than his... Now on board with Emil Lundell, making his way down the finish, and he is indeed 2,000s quicker than Tope. Is now currently on the front row. Here we have Harry, he has invalidated. Joris was slower in the first sector, but still has some time to go. Simone Violo actually up 1.5 tenths, so he is on his way to get close to Joris's lap time, maybe even quicker, making his way round the Parabolica. Can Simone go one quicker, put a Ferrari on pole? He does not. It's only P5 for him, with Benasek not improving, but let's go on board. No, Joris is already slower, over 2 tenths slower, so he is not going to beat that. Cordon N'Golo is quite a bit quicker. He jumps to P5. Good run by him. Here comes Javier Domin then, is about 0.5 tenth quicker than his own lap time, and with that can hopefully improve a few more positions, but I don't think any driver is going to be contesting for pole anymore. Coming round Parabolica now, Javier Domin, how quick can he go? Jumps from P11, P12 now to P9. Great improvements in the final sector, but it's pole position for the AlphaTauri of Matthew Bassett.
Beautiful. What a qualifying session. You got to feel for some of the drivers like Elliot Norin, Banaszak. They were in stellar laps but end up invalidating it. That is why that last run, playing your cards on that last run is probably not the wisest all the time. But it did work out for someone like Emil Landel, who puts it on the front row. In fact, he's the only driver to really push Tope off the front row.
He has only just been able to do so. So with 0.02 of a second, Tope is in row 2 together with Joris Kusa. Then we have Cordon N'Golo, Harry Nunn's row 3, and Simone Violo, the highest placed Ferrari, but not the highest placed Ferrari engine, in P7, with Harry right next to him, row 4. And row 5, we have Javier Domin and Alan Benasek will round off the top 10. And then we have Jeremy Gallanier, Tamas Kokeni, Elliot Norin, Andres Franco, Napadovsky, Sparky, Harlem McKees, Noel Corman, and finally the last row, row 10, is for Benny Fabos. So we are now indeed going for a restart. The drivers are already asking about that, which means that we have a little bit of extra time to talk about what has all happened and what is still going to happen. In the meantime, for everyone in the chat who is watching it tonight, let us know who you hope is going to win the race here around Monza tonight, because I think we have quite a good race up ahead, with the drivers being fairly close to one another.
And the fact that the pecking order has changed given the last couple of races' order at the very least. The Alpine drivers, finding themselves on the back foot, not just Jeremy, but Joris as well. Same with the Ferrari drivers, Violo and Banaszak, not having the greatest of times. So I'm looking forward to the underdogs of the AlphaTauri drivers and the Alfa Romeo drivers actually perform significantly well around Monza. It does seem like, they're set for it, they're ready for it, they're ready for any kind of challenges coming their way. So yeah, midfield's going to be chaotic as always, but the front of the field, I think things are going to be interesting, and whoever runs away with the race lead, I'm curious to see who it's going to be into turn 1.
Alright, so we are going to take a quick break, jumping into the intermission. In a moment, we will be back, and then we will have the race for you tonight, round 6. This is Monza. And we are back once again. In the meantime, we're just quickly chatting out with the drivers to make sure that we're in the lobby and all ready to go. I'll just let them know that I am still in the lobby. And I think you're also still there, right?
Yeah, just jumped in, so good to go. Racing.
Right, so we are now loading out. Let's see if everything is okay. And when everything is okay, yeah, so we are here, we're still spectating, we have all the drivers in, so we'll just wait for them to ready up, and then we'll get this race underway. So the weather still is a question mark, so I haven't really seen what the weather is like, so we're going to find that out in a moment. We're going to have 27 laps around Monza tonight, the Autodromo Nazionale Monza. Yeah, like I mentioned before, 3.6 miles, 5.793 kilometers long, fairly long track. but out of highest average speed, this track, well, used to hold the world record. I think nowadays it's been beaten by the Jeddah Kernis Street Circuit, but before that, or is it still Juan Pablo who holds that record? Are you aware of that, Zatexter? I'm not sure. It's either going to be that or it's going to be beaten by Jeddah. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I'm not either when it comes to statistics in general, I'd say. But a highlight of Monza, if that is the one of question, I will mention 2018 qualifying. Kimi Raikkonen on pole position. I think at the time it was the fastest lap time in Formula One history, and it was set by one of the oldest drivers, or the oldest driver on the grid at the time. So yeah, that was a beautiful moment.
All right, I'm just looking into that, and I think it is still, let's see, average race speeds. This is the lowest. We're looking for the highest average speeds. Let's see, for a fast lap, of course, there's Rubens because he has the pole. Highest average quality lap is in 2020 by Hamilton, also on Monza, but highest average race speed for a winner, 2003, the Italian Grand Prix in Monza, Michael Schumacher was able to set that 247.5 kilometers an hour on average. And that is including pit stops. That is quite ridiculous.
That car was something else as well. 2004, you said, or 2002?
2003 it was.
3? Oh, okay. Yeah, I think those three cars, 2002, 2003, 2004, there was something else. Particularly the 2004 one. But yeah, they're even fun to watch on the videos of the past that you get to see here and there.
They are, and not just lovely to watch, but lovely to hear as well. Hearing that engine roar of that SF, I believe it's the SF 2004, that Ferrari from 2004, it's just a treat to listen to. But yeah, back then, very dominant season for Michael Schumacher. I believe he won the season with 5 races spare, and the record only beaten this year by Max. For the earliest championship victory ever. But back then, much fewer races, so I think that season was even more impressive. And I think that was also a season where he got 100% podiums throughout the entire season, I believe. So perhaps the most dominant season ever, and yeah, with more and more races to be added to the calendar, also much, much harder to beat. In the meantime, the drivers are arguing a little bit about the weather. Not sure if it's going to change. Meantime, let me just quickly jump back into the game to see if we're about to get started. The drivers have not readied up yet. It looks like we're going to have a sunny race. So 27 laps around the sunny Monza. So we don't have to worry about any rain here tonight. That is going to tamper with the strategies that the drivers have tonight. What kind of tires do you think that the drivers are going to start on, Zataxter?
Well, first off, I'd say I'm a bit bummed out you're not going to get too much rain, or any rain for that fact, but back to strategies at the very least. I think we're going to see most of the drivers, this particular grid, we've seen it on multiple races. Most of them go hards and then they go mediums after. At least that's what they're comfortable with. On this track, I think they're going to go the unconventional route. I'm going to throw in a random wild prediction that we're going to see some of them on the softs. I wonder who's going to be daring enough in the back of the pack to do it, but I think they're going to do it regardless.
Yeah, I think most of the drivers indeed are going to go for a one-stopper. In the meantime, we are going to load into our race in Monza, so we're quickly going to swap over to the in-game view, and we're going to cover all the action for you tonight. So as you can see, the drivers are now loading in, and as soon as they have loaded in, we'll be able to get underway with race 6 of the season. 11 races in total. Remember, as you know, next week is the last race before the break. Am I correct?
Yeah, should be.
So next week, Singapore, I believe we have.
Another beautiful track, but more on that perhaps later, because today it's Temple of Speed time. It's time for the Temple of Speed. I absolutely love this track, considering I still consider myself a beginner of sorts in sim racing. Probably not behind the mic, but definitely behind the wheel. My lap times will speak for themselves, much like Matthew Matthew's lap time spoke for him today around qualifying. I think he has, faced off some of these drivers up in front and failed to, keep up the pace in the race. So in Monza, around a track like this one, he might just get eaten up heading into turn one. Hopefully he can hold them off and pull off a gap, but into turn one, hopefully he's got his elbows out.
He will definitely have to watch out for that because we're going to see some overtaking opportunities down the start-finish straight. As you were mentioning, Monza's a nice beginner track. For me as well, still a little bit of a beginner when it comes to the racing here. Monza definitely not one of my favorite tracks. I always manage to mess up the Prima Variante, can never do well there. The rest of the track usually goes well, but when the tires degrade, I always manage to bin it around Lesmo 1 or Lesmo 2. So definitely not a race that I look forward to drive if I have to do that. But thankfully the drivers out here tonight are going to do a much better job than I will. In commentating, I think we should just both stick to that, at least for me. I'm not sure how well you are as a driver, probably better than me. But for me, I will gladly stick to the commentating. And as soon as that clock hits 3, as it was for normal races, now we are at the start-finish straight. It's 3, 4, and 5 are at lights. And it is go! We are underway with a great start for the AlphaTauri of Matthew Bassett, and he's not going to be challenged into turn 1. Who is going to be challenged is Emil Lundell, because around the outside we already have Tope and a big slide by Matthew Bassett. He does save it, but he's actually on the softs.
Oh, that's absolutely crazy to save a slide like that one as the ones behind battle it out wheel to wheel. That's Tope and Emil Lundell going wheel to wheel, much as the other drivers 2 by 2 by 2 around Monza. Tope's made the pass on Lundell and almost 3 abreast with some of those drivers out of the chicane, and somehow there's not been too much chaos, but Jeremy does find himself tumbling down to P11.
Yeah, and the drivers that will want to make some early passes here are going to be Matthew Bassett, Joris Kruse, and Simone Violo. They are on softs. 3 soft drivers currently in the top 5, with the other soft runners being Jeremy Gallané, currently P10, Andres Franco in 12th, Tamasco Kenny P13, and down in P18 we find Benny Fabos. As we make our way towards the end of lap 1, we're going to look at the position change. 1 gained by Tope, 2 gained by Simone Violo, 1 for Jeremy Gallané, 2 for Andres Franco, 2 for Harlan McKees as well, our substitute driver, and finally 1 place gained by Benny Fabos. We immediately see that Matthew is trying to gain quite some track advantage over Tope. He will need to extend that by another half a second at the end of this lap, so he can stay out of DRS range.
Yeah, battles unraveling in the midfield from the soft runners, as you'd expect, trumping out the hard runners in the early parts of this race. Oh, Javier Domin, something might have just unraveled. Oh, he's getting all too bumpy, 3 abreast. In fact, you might want to see the chaos unraveling at the back of the pack behind them as well, but 3 abreast through Monza they go. That it just might be a one to watch, and as I say that, I'm losing track of the battles, but nevertheless, Tamas Kokeni is making his way towards Ali Tualai, and Banizak was in an intense battle, a battle of the hard runners at the back.
Yeah, we're now on board with Alan Banasek. We just managed to catch a little bit of glimpse of that fight there as Emil Lundell's dropped down the order a little bit more, and Joris has overtaken Tope already, so he's already hot onto Matthew's tail. Looks like he again wants to go for that race win and not leave anything up for grabs for his competitors this season. Has been performing so amazing. Every single race out there has been doing well, unless there was an incident or a penalty involved. He would be the race winner. Zalsal set the fastest lap down. We're quickly going to go on board with him, because here comes, down the inside, Joris Kruse onto Matthew Bassett. Outbreaks his competitor. A little bit of a slide there into the Prima Variante, but the race lead now to the Alpine driver. Joris is up front.
Oh, you'd love to see them battle it out early into the race for the race lead, mind you. Credit to Tope, and as I say that, Bassett might just look down the inside into the chicane, probably not, backs off, and will hold on to P2 for now. Tope, despite being on the hards, is keeping Violo at bay for now. Violo will be scratching his head and thinking he needs to make this pass on to Tope pretty soon, because his tires are going to fall off much sooner than the Mercedes drivers.
Yeah, so far this is pretty good news for Tope. Hasn't lost a net position yet, gained a position earlier on, lost that now to Joris. But with the hards, comfortably following the soft runners up ahead. So that is good news for him later on down the race, because when they're going to switch tires, the soft runners likely will be going for the hards unless the safety car is going to play into parts. For Tope, he will have the free switch, the free option to choose for the mediums or the softs. I think he'll go for a little bit of an earlier stop onto medium so he doesn't lose too much track position. But then he will have fresher tires and a softer compound towards the end of the race, as we see Matthew retake the lead over from Joris. But down the end of the race, I think the man to watch will be Tope, because strategy-wise, he seems to have it all planned out.
Sure does seem like it, but Joris tries to come back, much like Matthew tried last time around. Matthew did, of course, hesitate into the chicane and backed off. A similar sighting here now as Joris does the same, but Tope, despite being on the hards, is keeping up pretty well with the front two runners, so them battling it out up in front is playing right into the hands of the man who's on a different strategy in compared to the two up in front. And Violo seemingly is pretty comfy in P4 for now. It'll be interesting to see how Jeremy, Franco and Kokeni down in P8, P9 and P10 will make it up through the field, because they've got 3 hard runners in front of them as well.
Yeah, we're now currently on board with Simone Violo, who is starting to get closer and closer to Tope up front. We just saw heading into the first Lesmo was only about a 10th away, as now that gap has increased to about 3/10. Well, it's down to lower 2/10. Has a much better exit down the Parabolica. He is not using too much of his ERS systems, the energy recovery system as it is called, but down the main straight we see Joris go for the move onto Matthew Bassett, and immediately there Tope flies by as well. So the hard runner now in second place. Perhaps a better exit here for Simone, as we saw Matthew struggle a little bit coming out of the Prima Variante, but it will not be enough to go for an overtake yet, and it looks like Tope is not going to lodge a move down into the Seconda Variante here, the beginning of Sector 2, so no more overtakes, at least for the time being. The gaps are staying also close, with no driver up until P18 actually, falling outside of DRS range, so it's incredibly close, but everything's still to fight for.
Yeah, lovely to see. And up in front, Tope, I mean, credit to him, he's been doing a phenomenal job, and hot on his tail comes Matthew Bassett once again as they go through Ascari and onto that back straight. Of course, Tope's been smart about this. He's kept it well within 2/10 and 3/10 of Matthew Bassett and even Joris when he was running in P2, and he's able to pull off that move when Joris did onto Matthew. Now he might just be a sitting duck. You can see how close Bassett gets on the main straight. Weaves to the left hand side of the track, gets alongside of him. The wheels might just bang, but he's on a battle of his own. Somehow they don't touch, not 3 abreast, but Tope takes the lead of this race on hard tires.
And a little bit, oh, that is contact between the Ferrari and Matthew Bassett. We saw that Simone was around the outside of the Prima Variante, but heading in there was a little bit contact between the two. Thankfully, no damage there at all, but it does cause Matthew Bassett to lose 2 positions there. So I have to say, see later on if the stewards have anything to say about that. In the meantime, also have to keep an eye on Jeremy Gallané, who's made up 4 positions so far in the race, but is starting to charge up the field. The second Alpine driver who didn't have the best sorts of qualifying, but is now getting closer and closer to Cordon-N'Golo up front. Perhaps down the main straight, he can launch an attack on him and take over P6.
Yeah, it's pedal to the metal up in front for some of the drivers. Surely enough, Joris is all hands on deck and trying his best to close that gap, which is opened up to half a second now. Begs the question, is he trying to conserve tires? But back to that driver you spoke about, Jeremy and Arinon's battling it out for position up in front. There's a switch as well. Emil London making that pass across the final corner or so, and Jeremy makes that pass stick onto Nuns well before the main straight.
Yeah, but Harry Nuns is still going to dive around the inside here into the Prima Variante as we see, oh, carnage! That is Joris who's been hit. we see that Emil Lundell has dropped down a bit more, but what exactly happened to yours there? That must have been a tap on the back because he was driving quite far up ahead, but he's now dropped back down the order quite significantly, finds himself in P9 now. It's not the first race that he's been involved in an incident, the third race actually out of the 6 in total. The previous 2 incidents, not really to any of his fault. For this one, we could not see it. We'll likely hear about that later on in the race, but now has quite the recovery to go for if he still wants to win.
Yeah, playing straight into the hands of Tope, who's, pulled off a stellar gap to the rest of the field. 1.5 seconds. And the 2 drivers behind him are on soft tires, and we know they'll be heading into the pits relatively earlier. So credit to Tope for keeping his composure and holding on to that race lead. But the battles continue in the midfield. I believe that is Elliot Norton making the pass on Kokeni. Despite Kokeni being on the soft tires, are the softs, had its day around Monza, or are the soft runners being pushed to a position to conserve? He will not. Matthews made the pass on to Violo up in front, and he's back in P2.
Oh, and around the escape route, we see Andres Franco fly, but you'll have to give back quite a few positions and will now be further behind the grid. Was pushed onto the grass by Jeremy Gallané as he tried to go for an overtake around the outside to turn 1. That did not work out. We saw a bird's eye view from Joris' car, so we had a good view of that incident there. But instead, as you mentioned, up ahead, Emil Lundell, Simon Violo, Matthew Bassett fighting there. A gap is starting to emerge between Matthew and Simone as well. That is now about 0.8 of a second, so Simone will have to make sure that he stays within the second and keeps that DRS up ahead. In return, Matthew has to gain another 0.3 if he wants to get inside the DRS range of Tope, who on the hard tires has escaped from that in the time being, presumably after that incident earlier on with Joris. Joris is still in P8, but for the drivers, especially Tope and Violo, this is good news for them in terms of the championship.
Without a doubt, and Coroningolo in P5 gets alongside of Emil Lundell onto the main straight. They're wheel to wheel on the main straight with the Ferrari in sights. They're going to be 3 abreast into turn 1, and both of them make the pass onto the Ferrari. Who's going to come out on top as a winner in this battle? It's going to be the Williams with its nose in front. I believe they did make contact, but who's going to get the better exit? It's going to be Coroningolo as he comes up in a P3. Violo follows suit. Up in a P4 he goes. Lundell's been handed the short end of the stick.
That was some great fighting. I was very worried as we see another slide by Matthew Bass. I was very worried that Emil Lundell was going to hit the grass and crash out of the race, but Simone gave him just enough space to overtake around the outside and then go in side by side into turn 1. Was getting a little bit of 2021 flashbacks when Lewis and Max tried to go there side by side. That didn't go well, but it shows that the sim racers here tonight can give each other just enough space to keep both cars on track. Might be been a little bit of contact, but no damage or no falling back whatsoever. And in the meantime, Matthew Bassett has reclosed that gap onto Tope and is back within the DRS range.
Yeah, particularly worried about Tope now, considering she's lost out on all ERS and he continues to deploy it. He's in no mood to really conserve his ERS despite knowing Matthew's on a different strategy altogether. He had that 1.5 second gap even. I was wondering whether Tope is really conserving ERS, but it seems like he isn't. And no passes this time around on the front of the field. In the midfield, however, Harry 12 does get as close as he can to the Ferrari of Banizak, but positions hold on this time around the main straight. On lap number 10, folks, Tope leads this race ahead of Matthew Bassett and Coroningolo in the top 3.
Yeah, and at this point it's going to see how long will these soft runners stay out. If they can stay out a little bit longer, we could... Oh, we have a yellow in sector 2.
Banizak.
That is Banazak, who has dropped down the order. Let's see what has happened to him and if his car is doing okay. I think he spun out heading into the Seconda Variante as he's now making his way through the first Lesmo. But by the looks of it, there is no damage to that car. Does have a little bit of a struggle on the exit there, but I think for the time being, it is looking all right for him. And I don't think he's missing any front wing end plates either. And no, he indeed is not. So car seemingly okay, as we're going to jump back towards the front of the grid, where Simone Violo is starting to get back at Corningolo.
Yeah, the climb is on for some of the drivers, and the others have lost quite a bit of positions. And that's a midfield battle. Jeremy coming back for his position onto Joris, or perhaps no, Joris is headed into the pits, and battles continue. Alfa Romeo, Red Bull, and Williams in the midfield. Elliot Noren passes Harry Twelak, and he makes sure it sticks. Napadowski's in that mix as well. That is Harry Twelak losing not one but two positions into turn one. None of the drivers are giving up though. There were almost three abreast through sector one. But somehow Elliot Norton's going to be the lead car out of that battle. And Harry Twelak is left battling it out with Napadowski. And ahead of the chicane, one of them will have to back off. They will not. It might just cost Harry Twelak considerably. And he'll have to settle for P10 for now.
That was some great late braking by Napadowski, who kept his Williams in front of that Red Bull driven around by Harry. So he hangs on to P9, has made up 6 places so far this race, the highest gainer all the way around. But the driver that we have to keep an eye out now for is Joris. Joris has gone for the mediums, so reckons he can finish the race on the mediums. Because he dropped back a little bit earlier after that incident means he's now going to go for some quicker runs, try and make up a couple of positions, and when the other drivers are going to come into the pits, that he can get the better strategy. I think his biggest rival at the moment is going to be Tope, but I think some other drivers are going to be heading into the pit soon. Jeremy Galladay has now come in, so he's likely just going to resume the track just behind Joris. The other drivers I think going to come in about 1 or 2 laps from now, but they are going to have fresher rubber at the end and likely switching to the mediums also.
Yeah, that leaves only 2 drivers out on track on softs, and it's the front runners of Matthew Bassett and Simone Violo who somehow put themselves and kept themselves in the top 5 for now. Of course, the gaps don't seem to be playing in their favor as much. You know, Emil Lundell has been on a charge and is still within DRS range of Violo. Same with Coro Ringlo on to Matthew Bassett. And I believe that is Napadowski making the pass on to Elliot Noren. That's for P7. The battles continue. Napadowski. Okay, that Elliot Noren seems to be struggling all of a sudden.
I think Elliot is going to have to look for the pits in a moment, as we're now on board with Matthew Bassett. He's starting to get closer to Tope, but is not trying to move in for the kill and trying to get the overtake. Meantime, Cordon N'Golo and Simone Violo, Emil Lundell and Harry Nuns all within DRS range. So 6 drivers, and also from 6 different teams. Won't forget to mention that, as the drivers are now almost all going to head into the bins, as Matthew almost bins the car into the wall. Tried to go for some extreme late braking, but now it's going to be key to see where are these drivers going to be coming out at. Will they come out ahead of Joris or behind? We're on board with Matthew. He's swapping to the mediums. Will come back out behind Tope. So no overtakes have been made in the pits. But where is Joris? I hear Joris come down the straight. There is Joris. But can he go for the overtakes on all of them? He has done so successfully. So Joris is now in the lead. It's on 2 lap older tires. But behind him, Tope has also, he has switched for the mediums, right? He has gone for the mediums also. Napadowski picks up a 3-second time penalty for corner cutting. But it looks like the strategy so far for Joris again is going well. Tope not taking any risk, just stopping at the same time. So that means his tire advantage is gone. But himself, Matthew Bassett, Simone Violo, Corningolo, Emil Lundell, and also Jeremy Galladay are a little bit ahead in terms of strategy because they have fresher tires.
Yeah, of course, provisional lead, don't forget that, because Harry Nunn, surprisingly enough, is leading this race, and we've got not just 1 or 2, but 6 drivers who've decided to stay out on the hards, and they're battling it out pretty well. Harry Twelak, Napadowski, and Harlem, you know, that's a rebel sandwich Napadowski's found himself in, and Elliot Norton's not too far behind, but we do see Napadowski saying, that was good enough rebel sandwich for a lap or so. I'm heading into the pits for a fresh set of tires. Alan Van Azak follows suit, but up in front, that is Harry Twelak making the pass on to Elliot Noren up into P2.
And here we have the lead change, the provisional lead switch, as Tope goes with a smooth overtake down the main straight onto Joris Kruse, who together with Tope has just over a second advantage over Matthew Bassett, who's provisionally in P3, currently P7, with 4 drivers still having to stop up ahead. Those 4 drivers are Harry Nuns, the other Harry 12, Elliot Noren, and Harlem Acrees, our substitute driver for tonight. And if we look at the stops, they are also the only 4 drivers yet to take a pit stop. The tires that we have here, most of the drivers will be on the mediums. Javier Domin has been out on these for quite a bit longer, so has Noel Carmen and Benny Fabos. But yeah, the drivers up ahead are likely going to switch. They could switch for mediums, but perhaps also stay out a little bit longer and then go for softs. And that might be the strategy that Harry Nuns is going for. If he can stop a little bit later, stick on those softs, and have more pace towards the end, he could potentially have the advantage towards the end of the race.
Yeah, it does seem like Harry Nuns might have just played this a bit smarter than the rest of the drivers, at least in his bunch, who are, staying out on the hard tires. It does seem like he's leading up to a good enough pit stop, put himself in the thickness of the action amongst Bassett, Jeremy, and the likes of the other drivers who were competing for the race lead previously. But for now, if I'm seeing that Harry Nuns continues to lead that race, but down in the midfield, the provisional race leaders, or the fight in the front perhaps, is Matthew Bassett, Violo Coroninglo getting their elbows out. Of course, believe there was a pass as well in the mix, but they got the Alpine drivers to worry about up in front.
Yeah, Jeremy got the overtake down onto Matthew Bassett. Simone was looking down the inside, then down the outside of Matthew Bassett, but could not make the overtake. Sting as Jeremy spins out! A huge spin for the Alpine driver, and that is going to cost him a potential race win, where he was fighting for, was about 1.2 seconds away from Joris and Tope up ahead. So provisionally in P3 he was, but now down the order, P10 for now, so P7 provisionally, but also 5 seconds behind the next driver up in front, that is Emil Lundell, so not going well for him.
You gotta feel for Jeremy. He's not had the greatest of qualifying, and the race is seemingly not going his way either. Harry Nuns, our race leader, has come into the pits. He had a 9-second gap to Elliot Noren, who's got Red Bull steaming and staring down his gearbox. Might just get the pass done as well. So Harlem, this is for the race lead for now. Makes his way into P1, and I wonder where he'll come out. Meanwhile, however, Joris Violo Coroninglo getting it out there, and that is Coroninglo and Violo going wheel to wheel through turn 1 and 2. Who's gonna get the better exit out of the 3 drivers there? Matthew Bassett in the mix as well. They stay wheel to wheel, and the Ferrari's on the lead on that one. Bassett not too far behind. Into the chicane, they're not going to be able to get their elbows out. Violo holds on to that battle in the lead.
Yeah, Matthew being very cautious there not to run into the back of any of the other drivers. We see that Harry Nuns has gone for the mediums, so he will have to make up a 5-second gap up ahead if he wants to close in on the other drivers and still go for a race win. So currently not looking too great for him. So we have 2 groups at the moment. We have a group between Tope and Joris Kruse, who are within DRS range. And then we have a group with Simone Violo, Coroninglo, Matthew Bassett, and Emil Lundell. So we have a DNF. We have a safety car. Safety car is out after a crash for Noel Carmen. And this is going to change everything, because this means that Harlem Acrees and Elliot Noren are going to get their free stop behind the safety car. And I cannot imagine the other drivers staying out. So we suddenly have a new race leader, I think. We have a new race leader, and that is going to be Harlem Acrees.
And you gotta feel for Harry Nuns, who had just made his pit stop, and those are the sauce coming on for most of the drivers up in front. That is Harlem Acrees and Elliot Noren on to the soft tires on lap number 17. We got 10 laps of racing, folks. Oh.
Harry Nuns stayed out. He is now leading the race, so he was only on 1 lap old mediums, as you mentioned. There's now Alan Banasek has gotten a penalty for a collision, which, well, is interesting because it happened behind the safety car. Corbin Ngolo went for the mediums, so he thinks he's going to have better pace on those towards the end. Of course, there's still 10 laps to go. Alan Banasek has decided the same thing together with Napadalski. Harry Nuns, of course, on only 1 lap old medium, so that won't matter too much. But now the fight's been quite turned around, because we thought it was quite clear-cut who was going to be fighting for the win, that it was going to be Tope together with Joris. But all of a sudden, pretty much all the drivers are back in it, aside from Alan Manasek, Napadalski, and Jeremy Gallané, because they have 3 seconds to their name, but all the other drivers are still in it, and we have 10 laps to go.
And that's why provisional standings only matter so much. Anything could change. Who would have thought Noah Carmen would end up crashing out on track and bringing out the safety car. The Hainan on the mediums might not be a sitting duck at the start of the race, I'd like to think, unless the safety car does stay out for another lap or so. Then the rest of the soft runners are going to get enough heat into their tires to make that pass on the Hainan, but he's got to have his fingers crossed and hope that the rest of the field right behind, at least in the early parts after the safety car restart, is battling it out behind him and keeping themselves to themselves, essentially, and he can run away with the lead and open up a gap, much like Tope did early into this race.
Yeah, as the drivers are now lining up all behind the safety car, it looks like they have all caught up, so likely at the end of lap 18, we're going to see something happen. Yeah, Jeremy Gallané being very wise to head into the pits here together with Alan Manasek. Remember, 5-second time penalty will be removed now, means you will be at the back of the grid, but it means you won't have to worry about those 5 seconds later on. Napadalski's got 3 for corner cutting, that won't be removed, so he's staying out. But for Jeremy and Manasek, they will be able to resume at the end of the grid, but still have chances to come back at their competitors. So great thinking by them too. They should be able to catch up with the safety car, as we're likely going to see safety car in this lap at the end of sector 2. So that is just in front of Ascari, but the drivers will need to hurry up, otherwise they won't have caught up by that time.
Yeah, sure enough, we're going to see some racing action here at the safety car restart. You know, Harinan's leading this race. I wonder how he must be feeling. And Harlem Markey was the other hard runner along with Elliot Noren, who have, decided to go onto the soft tires, but find themselves in positions they didn't really think they'd find themselves in. They've made up technically, or statistically, they've made up 10 and 15 positions respectively. Noren being 10 and Harlem being 15. And what this would mean for those drivers if they found themselves on the podium here today would be one of less question and more of celebration, I'd say.
Let's see, just now we're in the final sector. I did not get any note of safety car in this lap, so it looks like the lights are still on, I think. The lights are still on, so we're staying out for yet another lap. Thought the safety car was going to be coming in, but because Alan Manasek was too far behind, it means we're going to be another lap behind the safety car. No, it's actually safety car in this lap. That is so late. That is such a late warning, and it means that immediately Harry Nuns can dictate the pace and likely is going to be going as late as possible. But look at that, Harlem McKee's very ready for this, although Harry Nuns still catches him napping just a little bit. But Harlem will be going for a move here down to turn 1. He has to. He wants to get that race lead, at least for the time being, around the outside in the Prima Variante, but gets outbraked by Harry Nuns. Perhaps with a better exit out of the Prima Variante, can make that move heading down the Curva Biasono and into the Seconda Variante, but looks like the gap is just big enough, and Harry Nuns has held off the first attack by his competitors.
Yeah, Harlem tried his best replicating Max Verstappen in a Red Bull, but didn't quite go his way, and he's left a sitting duck for Elliot Noren to pick him off. Perhaps he gets so close to the rear wing of the Red Bull, but couldn't get alongside him to make the pass. Now, Tope is not too far behind either, so things are getting interesting amongst the soft runners right here behind our race leader. So heading into Ascari and the backstage one is going to be moments to watch, but Noren trying his best to keep it within 2/10 at the very least of Harlem, hopefully making that pass on the back straight, but our race leader stays the same, the order stays the same. Tope is breathing down the gearbox of Noren, but the passes are yet to come.
The passes are indeed yet to come, but I think we're likely going to see a few coming down the main straight. Of course, DRS won't be activated until the beginning of lap 21, but here we have Tope. He's going to come closer and closer to Elliot Noren. Will want to go for a move here. Does manage to get a little bit closer, but also behind him, Simone Violo is quite close to him, but won't be enough to launch a move down into the first corner, although we see a little bit of tussling behind him in the back. It looks like Alan Banasek has gotten the overtake down onto Jeremy Gallonay, who is on the mediums. Alan, of course, on the softs. Most drivers out there tonight still out on softs, only 4 drivers on mediums. It is our race leader, Harry Nuns, and furthermore, Conor N'Golo, Napadalski, and Jeremy Gallonay, as Tomasco Kenny also picks up a 3-second time penalty for track limits, and so did Javier Domin in the previous lap.
Yeah, while Harry Nuns might not have his hands full, Conor N'Golo sure does. Matthew Bassett has been edging closer and closer, and in fact has tried to attempt a move or two in the last lap alone onto Conor N'Golo. Somehow he holds on to P7, however. Of course, on the next lap, I don't think that's going to be the case. Bassett's gotten into the groove with those soft tires. You can see him edging closer and closer to the Williams. Corner after corner at the very least. Probably a good time to turn our attention to the front of the field. It's the main straight. It's the time when we see moves being made up in front. But there's a half a second's gap to Harry Nuns and Harlem Marquis in P2. And Elliot Norton in the mix. DRS finally enabled, which means racing action is going to come our way, folks. 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane for Napadalski, who shoots himself straight into the pit lane. But as it stands, order stays the same. Midfield battles continue. Kokeni makes the pass on to Lundell.
So Kokeni indeed with a pass on Emil Lundell. He also loses a position now to Sparky, as Napadalski has retired his car after yet another penalty that was applied to him. Harry also with the overtake on Emil Lundell. He's lost 3 positions already at the start of this lap and will have to be careful he doesn't lose another to Andres Franco, who is just behind him. In the meantime, we are now focused on Harlem Marquis because he is getting closer to Harry Nuns up front. This is going to be first time DRS going to be activated since the safety car. Is he going to launch a move into Ascari? And it looks like he decides against that already. Not full throttle enabled, but he will be trying for a move as Emil Lundell picks up a time penalty for track limits as well. Immediately down the outside, we see Elliot Noren. So Harlem Marquis has to go for some out braking, and after he does that, has to use his DRS to try and go for a move down the straight. But Tope is also ready. Elliot Noren is ready. Overtakes are going to start now.
Oh, Elliot Noren, he is trying his best to position himself for the race lead. Sweeping to the left-hand side is Harlem onto Harry, and Elliot Noren follows suit into turn 1. He's staying on the inside the Haas. He holds on to a mere P2 at the very least. Who's going to get the stellar exit? It might just be Noren with the soft tires. After all, he tries his best to get alongside the Haas, but fails to do so. Has to settle for P3 on this occasion. Harry Nuns on the mediums. Harry Nuns stays P2.
Harry Nuns indeed stays P2, and yeah, because of those strategies, we see that the result has been swapped around quite a bit because the drivers that were fighting for the race were earlier on Tope, Simone Violo, and Jos Kuze and Corden Inglo, who are now in 4, 5, 6, and 7. But they are oh so close to that fight up front, and we can only wonder when are they going to try and make a move, as we see Simone try and swerve a little bit behind that Mercedes of Tope. These drivers will have to strike soon, and they're likely going to do it now as Joris is right hot onto Simone's tail, but has decided not to go for the move just yet. Has a lot of ERS left, and I think if he wants to make some moves stick, he has to go for the first move now. Will have to use a bit of ERS. Will have to try and overtake a little bit, but Harlem Marquis now, a sitting duck, is going to be overtaken by at least 1, but likely 3.
Noren desperate for a position, but Harry Nuns gets it. Tope out of nowhere, sends it down the inside. He's gotten 1. Can he get 2? Wheels banging with the Red Bull. That's a familiar sight. Mercedes and Red Bull banging wheels to turn 1 and 2 of Monza. But regardless, he's battling it out for P2 now. He's got the nose ahead. Can he hold on to it ahead of the chicane up in front? They stay wheel to wheel, and the Red Bull of Harlem somehow holds on to P2. What stellar racing we're seeing here, folks, through Sector 1. Oh, what stellar racing this is.
And some really good moves just behind there as well with Elliot Noren and Simone Violo. Elliot Noren now breaking Simone there and keeping his Alfa Romeo just in front of that Ferrari. So great moves by him, but that also means that Simone cannot get up far enough, at least for now, to go for some overtakes, as Elliot is already going for some overtaking moves just in front of Ascari. Very early on, as we have yellow in Sector 1, but that is because Emil Lundell is retired and also Benny Fabos has retired. All the other drivers still fighting for it, and it looks like the drivers are starting to position as what was Toppy doing. Toppy went wide. Toppy went very wide, almost losing it into Parabolica. Joris is out. Our championship leader is out. That must have been contact with Toppy, and that's a safety car.
That's a safety car. All sectors yellow. That's a full safety car, which means we might just have a reset of sorts for the last 2 laps, putting ourselves in a position of a mini sprint around the Temple of Speed. Unfortunate to see 2 drivers who were consistently competing in the front of the pack losing out in that fashion particularly. Tope, of course, he's still in the mix. He's running P4, but Joris retired from the race.
I would really like to see what exactly happened there. We saw Tope go wide. I think there must have been an incident that Joris had with either Simone or Tope. But what has now also happened, we saw 4 drivers come into the pits because they had not passed the start-finish straight yet. So those are Javi Domin, Alan Banasek, Tomas Kokeni, and Andres Franco. If the other drivers can't keep enough of a gap, and they won't go, well, are they going to go into the pits and concede track position? Or are they going to be like, yeah, we want fresher tires for the final 2 laps that we're going to get. We are going to go out. Very curious to see what happens. I also hope that the safety car doesn't bug out. But as far as I know, you should have at least 2 clean runs of racing. So we can only be 1 lap behind the safety car. And I'm very curious to see what's going to happen now. Are we going to come in? Or are these drivers going to stay out?
Oh, it seems like Harry Nance has made his decision. He's staying out. Harlem follows suit. Elliot Noren, Tope, everybody stays out except Sparky. He heads into the pits. He thinks he's got something running up in his head and might be able to pull something off at the last 2 laps, but he's put himself in a difficult position coming into the pits right now.
Well, he was already pretty much down towards the end of the pack, but it's very important to see if he comes out or in front or behind Javier Domin. He just comes out behind, but Domin does have a time penalty to his name. So Sparky eventually only loses 2 positions and has got fresher tires. So I think towards the end of the race, this is going to help him out tremendously. So perhaps a very good move there by Sparky. But for the drivers up ahead, they are not going to do anything as of sorts. We're going to see a restart in a moment. We're going to have 2 full laps, no DRS whatsoever to play with. So these drivers have to all do it on their own pace. And with everyone being so close to one another, I can't wait to see the restart.
In all honesty, if the race had resumed normally without a safety car, I really think Harry Nance, Harlem and Elliot would find themselves in a very difficult position because they had run out of ERS, whereas Tope, Viola and Coroninglo were stacked with it. Now it's level playing field all over again. Harry Nance will dictate the pace ahead of the safety car restart. It's all to play for. He's on the mediums with 9-lap all mediums, of course, and he's got 4 soft runners behind him. Coroninglo in the mix somehow has held it out there. The other medium runner so far. Let's not discount any one of the drivers thereafter. 2 laps of racing. Perhaps not the mini sprint I was talking about, but we're going to see some stellar passes, stellar moves hopefully. Harry Nance leads this pack out of Harlem, Elliot Noren, and onto the main straight. Who will be able to pick off the race lead into turn 1? Nance gets it going. Harlem follows suit. Noren is breathing down the gearbox of Marquis, and this might just be a pass relatively easy for the Alfa Romeo driver. He tucks straight behind once again. He does not want to take 1. He wants to take 2. He'll get none, however. Nance holds on to P1 for now. A lot of wheel banging through turns 1 and 2. And somehow the Haas stays in the race lead.
And we have a yellow in Sector 1. It looks like Jeremy Gallané and Harry have dropped down the order. The biggest profiters out of that, as we still see down the inside comes Harlem Marquis wheel banging and sends Harry Nance off the track for now. But that was a move that was not on by Harlem Marquis, and he's going to lose quite a few positions as a result. In the meantime, Javi Domin, Tomas Kokeni, Andres Franco have made up some positions as well. They are on the fresher tires, but can they catch up with the drivers up ahead? So far, it's looking very good for Harry Nance, who has got about 6 tenths up In the meantime, we see Joris mentioning in the chat that a man was 6 tenths behind him and managed to hit him, so he was hit off in Parabolica. That has cost him his race, as Anders Franco has picked up a 3-second time penalty for track limits. Javier Domin is making his way up, but Elliot Noren is ready for a move onto Harry Nuns. Can he do it down the start-finish straight?
Oh, one question that who will pass whom here as the penultimate lap ends and the final lap begins. Of course, Alan's battle's costed him dearly. Find himself down to P6 out of the podiums even. But Harry Nuns holding on to that race lead comfortably for now. Noren gets close, but he's not going to get close enough to make a pass. Violo's as close as possible down in P5 as well. Battles in the midfield. That's Bassett versus Cockney for P8, and Bassett leads that one.
Oh, and it looks like Harry Nuns has used all of his ERS. Elliot Noren perhaps has a little bit more. Defending towards the inside is Harry Nuns. So he's keeping that Haas just in front of Elliot. Harry going for his first race win here tonight of the season here at PSGL. PCF4 just has about half a minute left to go. Just a sector and a half left. But it is getting close now. Here comes Elliot Noren, almost touching around the outside, heading into Ascari. He's made the move stick. The overtake for the lead of the race. Elliot Noren now in the lead, just Parabolica to go. Can he hang on to it? Because there comes Top A2.
Oh, Tope might just be redemption for him. Or Cordor Ninglo in the mix. Everyone wants a piece of the action. Tope gets alongside Nuns. Who's going to be the lead car? It's going to be Elliot Noren, folks. Elliot Noren has it insides. You can see the stop finish line insides. But here comes Tope. He's going to get alongside. No, he will not. He was too slow. It's Noren, folks. Gets along the checkered flag to win the F4 Italian GP of this season in PSGL.
What an amazing fight all the way down to the end. I really thought that Tope was going to send it down both of the drivers into Parabolica, but he was only able to get one position there. But a great second place by him that is definitely going to help him out a lot in the standings, closing that gap with Joris, and also a solid result for Simone Violo. But the man that we have to keep an eye out the most is, of course, our Alfa Romeo driver. A great race win for Elliot Noren, and I believe that is his second race win of the season as well. So great job, very well done, as Tope also keeps his streak of podiums in order with another solid podium. I already forgot who got the podium. There we go. It's the Haas driver. That's Harry Nuns. So his first podium of the season. Some good points for Haas, and they needed that.
Oh, after a race like that one, us forgetting things shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, credit to Tope. You know, he's the one who started in that top 5, and despite the chaos, despite the 2 safety cars, he was still up there. He's still up there. He's on the podium. P2 finished for him. A proper pat on the back for him. But to think about 11 or 12 positions made up statistically for Elliot Noren, the wildcard team, as I've said before. What a win for him to take. Got a feel for some of the drivers, multiple drivers in fact here today. But as always, I think the Temple of Speed sets itself apart.
Definitely does. Yeah, from P13 to the race win, as the top 10 is rounded off by Tope, Harry Nuns, Cordon Inglo, Simone Violo P5, then it's Harlan McKees, Alan Banasek, Matthew Bassett, Javier Domin, and finally we have Andres Franco. But there will be a couple of things still to be said about the race. Not too many incidents out there, although the one with Joris was the most notable one. I'd be very curious to see what exactly happened there as the drivers made their way across Parabolica. But wow, I was not expecting that late safety car, and the drivers really going for it even into the last turn. A great fight that we've had, and a nice win for Elliot Noren.
Yeah, stellar stuff. I mean, you know, it's about almost 3 a.m. where I'm at right now, and that race got me hyped up so much. I'm ready for a run almost. To think it was already, you know, somehow scripted of sorts, with the battles up in front after the first safety car, and you know, we're getting to see the likes of Violo, Tope edge closer and closer to the drivers who found themselves in a lucky position up in front, and all of a sudden Joris retires and another safety car to throw things into pandemonium.
Yeah, and if we take another look at the standings, let's have the driver standings in front of us so we can see a little bit what happens to the standings if the results that are for now provisional stay as they are. Because if we look at the driver standings, yours, of course, is not going to score any points. Top A is going to pick up 12 points, moving up to 52, which will be 8 points behind that Alpine of Joris. Elliot Noren, who was in 33 points, going to pick up 16, will be 49, so that's 11 points behind Joris Kruse. Simone Violo finished P5, so that's going to be 6 points to his name, 52 points, so he's going to be equal on points with Tope, 8 points behind Joris. So Joris will still be our championship leader despite everything that has happened here tonight. So that is a little bit of extra information for you, but we will get you the full results once they have been confirmed next week. Because next week, as you can already see here, as we're going to take another quick peek at the calendar, next week we have another track with some hot action on their track that is notorious for having a safety car in every single race since its outing. And of course also the famous incident, the crash gate that happened there back in 2008, I believe it was. And yeah, Singapore, always a track with a lot of action. The only track this year where Red Bull was beaten. But I think this year, well, the Red Bulls have not picked up a race win here. It's been the Alpines, been the Ferraris, and it's been the Alfa Romeos. But perhaps we will see some new race winners coming out there next week.
Yeah, hopefully we get to see that. Of course, we all got to see that in this time around. Of course, Elliot Noren, not a rare sight to the top three, I'd like to think. But yeah, I think I've gone on about this race quite a bit, and I probably will go on again and again. That's how good it felt getting behind the mic for this one.
It definitely was a great ending to the race that we had tonight. As now it looks like the championship just before the break is narrowing down to 4 drivers. Joris Kruse, Simone Violo, Tope, and Elliot Noren. In the meantime, I also don't see any of the drivers in the waiting room, so it looks like we won't have any interviews for tonight. Hopefully, from next week onwards and also after the break, we're going to have some more interviews because that is always interesting to have. But for tonight, I'm afraid this is going to be it. So make sure to be ready for next week because Singapore is a big one. We'll be back here once more for PSGL PCF4 at 8 p.m. British time, 9 p.m. European time. That is for you, Central European time. We'll be back on December 14th with the last race before the break when we'll head to Singapore. See you all then.
See you, folks.
He's got the inside up here, he's through on the left hand side. Pumps the apex, gets on the power nicely, and that is job done. Jarno Opmeer now to the last couple of corners now. His finest drive, his greatest drive, and he's done it at the Circuit of the Americas. He returns to the top step of the podium. Once again, the GOAT is back. Jarno Opmeer wins the US Grand Prix in a stunning Grand Prix.